Bon, mesdames et messieurs, nous connaissons que l'affaire mini-FX a créé un pile problème dans la communauté haïtienne là. Eh bien, et je dis, hein, professeur a te fait un chita attendez, un chita parler avec et moun qui est responsable pour lui ramasser tout l'argent et qui appartient avec moun qui t'a investi dans les mini-FX pour remettre l'argent ça avec la communauté haïtienne là. Eh bien, nous t'ai fait presque une temps à parler avec receiver, M. David Castleman, sous qui travail que l'a fait, qui responsabilité, qui est que moun yo ka joindre Kobio, qui ça pour nous faire pour joindre Kobio et combien Kob moun yo t'a espéré joindre. Eh bien, monsieur te fait un bon petit temps expliquer toute bagaille fil en aiguille en anglais, mais pour me dire non, c'est une très bonne interview et nous faisons en anglais naturellement. Mais moi-même, tout me vais l'expliquer nous plus qui ça que monsieur dit dans bon Jean créole pour nous comprendre. Et je pense que c'est une interview qui est importante pour garder. Sous c'est une monde qui peut en ce sens et aller sur website, sur portal et MiniFX receiver pour confirmer investissement côté fait eh bien aller sur ça le plus tôt possible parce que nous gagnons jusqu'à 26 février pour nous faire ça mais pas tant c'est 26 février pour faire le kounia. Et si vous avez une question, tout, pas de problème, vous doit toujours poser des questions parce que nous pour aller, ouais, qui ça que nous avons fait pour plus haïtiens, gens qui ont investi au cas qu'on est, qui côté pour jeune Kobio. Eh bien, gardez l'interview, faites commentaire, si nous avons des questions, posez des questions pour nous capables d'avancer, pour assurer que tout le monde qui a investi dans Emini FX gagne Kobio, Jean-Louis mettre là. Bon, je suis bien content qu'on regarde des vidéos. On a retourné avec David Castleman, qui est receiver pour question Emini FX. Thank you so much for joining another episode of The Professor. This is the channel dedicated to the Emini FX saga. Today, we have the opportunity to speak to the receiver, Mr. David Castleman. As you know, he's been appointed. He's been working very hard trying to not only collect the money, but also making sure that all of you have invested get your money back. So, Mr. Castleman, thank you so much for joining the professor.
Happy to join you.
Castleman, I know you've been at this for a while now. Can you kind of tell us a little bit where we are, what's going on, as much as you can, as much information as you can, so that people understand what's going to happen? Because there are one thing people ask, when are we going to get that money? When that money is going to come to us?
I understand. So let me start with the asset collection aspect. I think that's important for folks to understand that, and this especially occurred while the criminal case against Mr. Alexander was pending. We were very busy collecting two things. One is as many assets of eMiniFX that we could find. And based on the financial condition report that I filed and the information that's in there and our general understanding of how much came in and how much went out, we think we have the bulk, the lion's share of the assets that are available for eMiniFX. That's a little over $150 million that we have in safe, high yield, interest-bearing accounts under receivership control. Thing we were collecting as much as we could are the financial records and documents of eMiniFX. While while the company had a database maintained by Mr. Alexander that has a lot of transaction data in it, the data that was recovered from eMiniFX is not a complete record of what investors put into eMiniFX or received from eMiniFX. And these numbers are quite large. There are tens of thousands of investors who collectively contributed over $250 million into eMiniFX. There were some redemptions, but that's only about 35 million. And so what we were able to do is work with the banks. So people probably remember contributing through TD Ameritrade Bank, through Bank of America, or through the coin payments or the Cash App systems. Those are the four most common ways people contributed money. We were able to get records from those financial institutions that show actual transactions occurring. So what they show are when a deposit is made, a withdrawal is made, there's actual money changing hands, just like when anyone looks at their bank statements, they see money coming in, money going out, and they know those transactions actually occurred in those amounts on those dates. What those records don't generally have, with some exceptions, and it gets a little technical, but just broadly speaking, are the E-mini-FX users who are associated with the transaction. So what my team and I did, again, this is largely while the criminal case was pending, was to go through the data that we recovered from the company, on the one hand, that has a lot of user data, but doesn't actually show each individual transaction, and all the data from the banks and the institutions that show each individual transaction, but not necessarily the users. And we did what we could to try to match them up. And in general, we were able to match up. We're talking about over 100,000 transactions. We were able to match up, I think, most of the transactions. And I'll talk about the user portal process in a minute, but I think if we look at the results we've already seen from the portal process, which is mostly verifications, I think our matching efforts were largely successful, but we knew at the time that it was not going to tell us the whole story. And so that's what led to what people are dealing with now, which is the user portal, which allows users to help us verify the data, the matching that we were able to do, and to help us fill in the gaps. And we've had a tremendous response from E-mini-FX users and from the community already to the portal. I know we'll talk about that in more detail. That's where we are at current. And the reason we need to do all of that is so that we need to know who put in what and who took out what, so that we can formulate a distribution plan, because that $155 million is to pay, largely is going to be used to pay E-mini-FX members, to try to refund what we can back. Now, there's also taxes, and there are some other claims that are generally fairly small in the grand scheme of things. But those are the two big uses of the funds. And so what we need to know, we can't know what to send each person unless we know what they put in and what they got out, because as an arm of the court, fundamentally, I have to be fair to all users and to formulate a plan that's fair to all users.
Thank you so much for explaining everything, at least the first part. So let's go to the second part. You've had a lot of work to do in order to kind of reconstruct the record a little bit, so that you know who put in what money and what to give to anyone. So right now, tell the people where we are right now. I mean, how long it would take for them to see any money? What's going on right now?
Sure. So the deadline for the initial deadline that I had for users to submit, E-mini-FX users to submit their transactions in the first instance, so their initial submission, was going to be December 18. And I had been hearing from members of the community that I think more time was needed, especially for this type of reach out to especially the Haitian community. Obviously, not every investor in E-mini-FX was Haitian, but a substantial number were. I don't have the exact demographics, but it's plain to me that we're very aware that this largely impacted the Haitian community. And so in response to what we were hearing from the community, I decided to extend the deadline by a couple of months to February 26, 2024. And that's to allow folks to submit what they call their initial transactions. And what that means is every user has been given, we've created a portal account, and we've created our own portal. Kind of like E-mini-FX was a portal, this is a separate portal. We've taken all of the matching that I mentioned before about trying to take the E-mini-FX data and then the bank data and tie those together. And we've presented that to users to then go and either verify, or they can add transactions, or they can dispute transactions. And they can also add members to transactions, because sometimes there might be one deposit, say for $50,000, that may be two people who made one deposit, but it's really for two accounts. We see it as one transaction, but they know that it's actually $25,000 for person A and $25,000 for person B, and they can tell us these things. And people are telling us these things, and we're working with users. We're going to start working even more with users in the next couple of weeks because we're getting a communication function as well. But in general, what we're trying to do at this point is have everyone come and tell us if they have any additional transactions or dispute our transactions, or like most people are doing, the vast majority, to verify all. So far, we've had about 20,000 users submit transactions. So we are getting a pretty strong response to the portal. But while we're working through the disputed and added transactions on the back end, I thought it made sense to give people a couple extra months to submit their initial transactions.
Mm-hmm. And I want to thank you for that, because I think it's good. But when we're talking about transaction and people, there is an issue that's very, very important. I'd like for you, if you can clarify it. There were people who gave money to third parties to open an account for them. Some of this account had been open, and that the transfer of money wasn't from outside to EminiFX. It was intra-transfer between one account to another account inside EminiFX. So what happened to these people in terms of any refund, any getting money?
So we have an option for, and we have had people do this, to sign up for, if they didn't have an EminiFX account, to sign up and to let us know if they deposited money into EminiFX and to provide documentation for that. For a lot of the folks you're mentioning, if they already have even if an account has no transactions in it, in other words, no transactions that we can see, but if that person still had an account with EminiFX, they'll still have a portal. That portal will have a screen with no transactions in the list, because if they didn't make a direct deposit that we can see on the bank statements that we can match to them, or a withdrawal that we can also see matches to them, then they won't have any transactions in our portal. But if they say deposited, like you say, some money through a third party, they can identify that third party and let us know that they actually have made that deposit, and we'll investigate to see if we can have further evidence that such a deposit through a third party occurred. I should add that my job as receiver is to figure out who and EminiFX owes money to, who has accounts at EminiFX, who deposited what and got out what. It is possible that there are some third parties, depending on the circumstances, who will not have a direct claim against EminiFX. And that's why in the procedures we have said, and I want to emphasize here again, that nothing we're doing is going to affect any EminiFX user or members or individuals' right as against a different person. So in your example, it's possible, and I can't speak to any individual case, I can't give advice to anyone, but it's possible that the third party you mentioned might have a claim or an issue with the person they gave the money to, even if they don't have it directly with EminiFX. And nothing we're doing is going to affect sort of third parties against other third parties. We have to figure out what EminiFX, what claims there are against EminiFX, and how to satisfy and do a distribution on those claims. And again, but so third-party claims may end up not being a part of that. But if there are ways that someone did deposit and it went into account, we do have options to try to sort that out as best we can, depending on what folks tell us and what records they have.
I mean, that's an issue, but I'll tell you one thing. I also know, as you know, I'm from the community. I know of at least 3 instances where one person, just one person, has collected 2 million, 1.8 million, 1.3 million as a group, and they supposedly put that money into EminiFX. In fact, some of people that I know actually give money to a third party in a pool. So they invest that money. And I'm sure you have all this record. You see maybe a business, somebody with a business name, for example, XLM LLC with 1.8 million. Now, that money doesn't necessarily belong to the person who collected it and put it into EminiFX, but it belonged to maybe 50, 100, 200 investors who are nowhere named. So how do we make these people whole? I mean, these people, you never heard of them. They don't have their name. They're just represented by a company. How do we how do we deal with these people? I mean, do they make a claim against MiniFX, or do they send it to you, or how did that happen?
So it's going to depend on every circumstance. So I don't want to, I'm going to speak generally here, what options we have. Without a specific circumstance, I don't want to give specific advice, but you understand that we're looking at every single circumstance that people send to us and trying to sort it out. Based on the facts that you're describing, the best option would be for the person who pooled and deposited the money to let us know who they were pooling and depositing for. And we do have that option in the user portal for people who deposited money to tell us if they made deposits on behalf of one or multiple other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me.
But one thing, I guess, in your example again, what I don't know is if that person, the person who was pooling the money, actually made any deposits to ImmuniFX, and that's so if they did not, then the money we're talking about never actually went into the ImmuniFX ecosystem. If it just stayed with the person who was pooling the money, in which case that to me could be a private dispute between the person who was pooling the money and the people who gave that person the money, and would have to be resolved independently of ImmuniFX, and obviously have no position on how that should be resolved.
I mean, that's very totally understand that. I have one of the things that I did, I asked people to send questions. So some of the questions I'm asking you actually from the people, not necessarily.
That's great. I'm happy to answer questions and answer questions from you and from members of the community. So that please keep them coming.
One member of the community sent a question, said there is a discrepancy between people who said that they gave $172 million to ImmuniFX, and you've said you've only collected 153 million. And I have tried to explain to people that even if it was 250 million, the money that already been spent to whatever ways and means people getting some money. So the receiver is not going to be able to give $253 million, $50 million back because you don't have that money. So can you explain in terms of how much money that the claim was, how much you were collected, and where some of that money goes, so people is very clear, they understand they're not getting 100% of their money back?
Sure. So there were about $262 million in contributions from users. There were about $34 million in withdrawals from users. That's about a net of $228 million. Many of the contributions were made in Bitcoin and kept as Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin during the period ImmuniFX was in operation generally declined, and quite substantially. I mean, every week, there were a couple of weeks where it went a little bit up, but generally it went down. And so the net effect of that was a loss of about $40 million by the time that I was appointed. The Bitcoin did continue to decline. It was as low as 60 million by the time we were able to recover it from offshore. It went back up over the course of our sale, which is all part of the digital protocol that we did about a year ago to the day. There's also a tremendous cash. So we had accounts frozen, both ImmuniFX and actually Mr. Alexander's accounts in his name, where the funds were traceable to ImmuniFX customers. So those accounts were frozen and turned over to me. And then there have been other recoveries. Probably the largest was for sure the largest outside of the digital assets overseas was the Long Island real estate. There were a number of almost 50 real estate properties that ImmuniFX had paid deposits on, about $2.5 million with contracts, and we spent a few months unwinding those contracts and getting the referees, which are kind of like mini receivers, in the state courts in these foreclosure actions, which are 46, I think 44 separate foreclosure actions that we were involved in, to eventually, bit by bit, get some of that money back. And then the money's also earning interest. That interest has been paying also for the professional fees who are working on this, on the accountants, the lawyers, the claims folks, the tax folks who are working hard to get what we can back to investors. So there's that. What am I forgetting? Oh, the cost. So there was about, even in less than a year, ImmuniFX spent around $6 million, $6 million on everything from office space to equipment to salaries to cars. We have generally been able to recover a lot of that. The cars, for instance, we were able to cover the cars and to liquidate those, but a lot of those costs are spent. So between there was about $9 million that was deposited to a third-party brokerage account for investment purposes. The trading on that account was generally not profitable, and so by the time we recovered, it was less than $2 million. So 9 had turned into less than 2, and this is not accounting for any of the 5 to 9.99%, in the returns that were applied to users' accounts. That was $260 million in returns that were not supported by any investing activity, as well as the bonuses, for about $50-60 million in bonuses for the multi-level marketing aspect, referral fees, basically, that were also paid as sort of balances, not paid in cash, but paid as sort of a change in the database to a display on the ImmuniFX dashboard. So I think the reason why, is that there were just a lot of investment losses. That what it looked like there were a lot of gains, but those gains weren't there, and in fact there were a lot of losses that I don't think were really reflected in the numbers that were shown on the dashboard. And so there's a lot less money in the end, I think, than maybe some users think there was, because largely for those reasons.
Well, there are two things I wanted to be very, very clear so people understand. One, there was no investment. There was no money invested that brings a return that kind of grew the pot. In fact, a lot of money were lost, basically.
There was some investment, but that investment was not profitable.
Okay. And are you talking about the $9 million investment or some other?
Yeah, largely. And the Bitcoin, to the extent that's an investment that was an issue that was disputed in the criminal case and never really resolved. Whether or not the Bitcoin was intended to be an investment or not, I have no position on that. Quite frankly, it doesn't really matter for our purposes. Right. The ImmuniFX was exposed to the price of Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin went down over that period, the value of ImmuniFX's Bitcoin holdings also went down. So there were losses either way.
Okay. So out of that $253 million, $250 million, you only have now $156 million that you want to be able to give back to the people actually putting money into ImmuniFX.
Correct.
The question that I have for you is, I know you have to do it by step, and people have to understand that you don't really do anything unless it is approved by the court. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So you're going to put together a distribution plan, and that distribution plan has to be approved by the court, right?
Correct.
So when do you think, talk a little bit about the distribution plan. When do you think you're going to have it and what it's going to look like? I know you may not have all figured it out yet because you're still waiting for people, but kind of give us an idea what that would look like.
So the distribution plan will be filed, I expect, sometime next year. I don't have an exact time frame on that. It will largely be, the distribution plan is for anyone who has a claim against ImmuniFX, not just investors. But that said, the ImmuniFX members have by far the lion's share of the claims, and so the biggest open issue with the distribution isn't really so much investors as it is taxes. There were no tax returns filed by ImmuniFX and no taxes paid. And I've been working with very competent tax professionals to do what we can to try to minimize the tax burden and to work cooperatively, hopefully, with the Internal Revenue Service to see what we can do in terms of minimizing the tax burden or making sure that investors have a higher priority. But there is a federal statute that specifically says that and you'll find this in many places, but including in receiverships, that tax obligations are given what's called priority, meaning that tax obligations have to be paid first. And so I actually also have a specific obligation in my receivership order, the one that appoints me, issued by the court, that requires me to pay taxes and file returns. And so that's going to be the biggest, I think, open question as to how much we have to distribute to ImmuniFX members, is how much we are going to owe in taxes. The distribution plan will take into account what people put in, what people put in, what people took out, and we will try to construct one that is as fair as possible, and users will have an opportunity to see that plan while it's pending, and we will have some type of way for users to send feedback. We may compile it and send it to the court, depending on that's how we've done it in the past, and I think that's actually worked fairly well. But I will expect users to have some opportunity to respond to that, and then we'll need court approval to actually make a distribution. Now, but I want to make it clear we're not there yet, right? Because what we need is to finish the portal process.
Correct.
So that means everyone by February 26th has to get us their initial transactions. And my team and I are already starting to work very hard on reconciling those transactions with what's in the data and trying to come up with our final list. And so while we're doing that, it's sort of in fancy terms, it's called a claims reconciliation process. It's a bit of a mouthful. But what that means is we're going to basically go and look at what everyone sent us, what the records are, what people have told us, and we're going to try to come up with the best list we can of what we think that that people put in and what they got out and what those claims are. But there may be instances where we have disagree or we take a different position than something someone's told us, or two people disagree and we have to decide what our position is going to be. So that will be what's called an objection, as we'll object. Again, it sounds a little harsher than it is, but basically we'll go and put our position in for the court. But the extent that that's different than what a user said, we'll also have to give that user an opportunity to respond. It's only fair that they would get an opportunity to, if they want to give us, to put their position before the court, and we would collect that and help the court help organize it. So, people don't have to appear in the court to do this. We'll help run that. For users, but we have to do that reconciliation so that we have a court-approved final list of what we are considering in and out to then do the distribution based off of. Because again, we have to do it fairly.
Well, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. And I want people to understand, because we talk in the community about money, and there's thing going on, people talking about 156 million, 160 million. But as it is right now, based on what you said, you've got the tax obligation that have to be satisfied. So nobody knows how much it's going to be. It's going to be something. But you've got all this work to do. So there's, people have to be paid to do those work. So there's going to be some expenses. So at the end of the day, you're not going to have $156 million to distribute. It might be a little less than that. I mean, is that a correct assessment?
I think it's 154 is where we're at right now. 54. Just not that it really... I just like to be accurate.
Right.
We take care of. I mean, I monitor the cash in this down to the penny, and I do mean to the penny. And every quarter we report on what we have to the penny. But it's hard to say at this point how much we'll have. There are a handful of other claimants who've put non-user claims in. We have a process for that. That's not very much. The tax is a very large open question. I am working with my accountants, and I want to do what we can. I think there are strong arguments why that tax burden should not be in the millions. I think there are strong arguments why, if there is a tax burden, why it should go behind instead of ahead from an equitable basis of investors. But we will need to get the buy-in from the U.S. government, and until we have that, I don't want to set any expectations or to make any predictions. We're doing what we can. I think that's what I can responsibly say, and we'll just have to go from there. That can take both. Has the it's not just the money. I mean, that's the other thing I think folks should understand. It's the time. The U.S. government operates on its time frame, and we will do what we can to expedite the process. But in the end, as I'm sure folks understand, I'm not the U.S. government. We're not the government. I'm a receiver. I'm not the government employee. I'm not a government official, and we're going to have to work with the timing on that. And to the extent there's uncertainty, I will have to be responsible and reserve appropriately, which might mean that distribution will come in phases too. So I think that's one other possibility, is that if we have some to distribute and we know we can, but we're waiting on other issues, but we know those that we can cap those issues, then it's possible that I'll do two or even three waves of distributions, because I would like to try to do what I can as soon as I can. But that's why the initial distribution may not be the only one, and I think is unlikely to be the only one. I think we're looking at least two, probably three distributions over the course of the receivership.
There may be two set of distribution, depends on how fast the government comes to in terms of the tax that's owes them the money, and it might be dispute about why the tax shouldn't be that much. So that litigation or that thing might take a little bit of time. So people understand that. But let's go back to because I've got a lot of questions about the February 26th deadline. You had a December 18 deadline, so you were gracious enough to expand it a little bit, so that gives people really 2 months to try to come in and put their claim on. So what happened after February 26th? Does that shut the door? That said, all the people that you have now are the claimants. You're not taking anything on anything else, or I mean, I don't want to encourage people to wait for the 26th. I want them to do it as soon as possible. I mean, if you're watching right now, you're watching this video. If you haven't gone to the receiver's website, please go there, file your claim as soon as possible. Don't wait for the 26th. So what happened after the 26th, Mr. Castleman?
Sure. So the 26th is the deadline for ImmuniFX users to verify their transactions, to add transactions, to dispute transactions. We have to set, because we also have to reconcile everything. And so we need a deadline for that initial submission by users, but we're going to continue the reconciliation process afterward. Now, as I mentioned, we were able to attribute most of the transactions. I think over 100,000, at least 90, I want to say. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but tens and tens of thousands of transactions we were able to attribute to users, and that's what's in the portal. And that's why most users have verified all their transactions, because they look and they see and they're all there. If someone has done that but doesn't hit submit, but all the transactions are there, then we're going to take what we had as essentially presumptively true. In other words, we're going to take that, and we're going to use that as our baseline for that user and say, well, they didn't dispute, they didn't respond. It's much better for folks to respond. I would much rather people do that. But no one's going to lose a claim based on the transaction data that we have. The risk is that if we're missing a transaction, or there's an issue with the transaction and you don't log on or you don't respond to the portal that we've already had open and to the next couple of months, then you lose under the procedures the right to then go and contest whether or not those numbers are correct. So this is the opportunity to tell us, hey, I looked at your numbers, Mr. Receiver, and I see that they're all correct. Great. Well, I looked at your numbers and I see something's missing. Then this is the opportunity for people to respond. And if we don't set a deadline, then it's going to scum up the rest of the process we were talking about. And so we've tried to balance giving people enough time to go in to submit their transactions, to make sure we can do interviews like this, so that people not just in the U.S., but in Haitian Creole who speak Haitian Creole can get more information. Our website, by the way, I want to add this too. Our website is in Haitian Creole and in French, as is the claims portal. So if folks are worried that, oh, the portal is going to be in English, it's too hard, there's a little button with the Haitian flag. You click that, and it'll switch to the Haitian Creole language for filling out the portal too. So we're trying to do what we can to make it as accessible as possible, but we do need to move the process along. We're going to keep working after the 26th, to directly answer your question, in order to do this reconciliation, to take what users have told us, to try to reconcile everything into one final report, submit it to the court, allow objections once that process is done, and then develop a distribution plan. So we'll keep moving along, but I don't want folks to panic, but I also don't want folks to think they don't have to go and log on and verify. I think that's a very important part of this process. And like I say, 20,000 users have already done that. Well, have already logged on and submitted transactions. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it would be at least 16, 17,000 have just verified them all.
Okay, I'm just going to add something in Creole right now. Nous tendez ça, receiver dit nous, pas tant, just also website receiver, mettez claim nous, et fait ça nous pour nous faire, pour nous pas dire que nous pas de connaître. Puis bonnet, c'est grand matin. Well, I mean, that's important because there was some rumors that somehow people who've invested money, they may lose the money if they, for example, didn't know about the deadline. We try as much as we can to talk in the community about it. But I think now you explained it, that if you believe somebody invested $10 and that's what you have, and that person agrees it's $10, then there's no problem. It's only when the person says, well, it wasn't 10, it was 20. And now I've had specific people who said to me, before Eddie Allison got arrested, my account shows $12,000, but I only invested $5,000. But I knew I had $12,000. And I try to explain to people, let's go back to what you initially put in. So can you just go a little bit over that? Because this has been the issue people have been talking about in social media. People have been talking about how much money was in their account, and somehow they expect that whatever percentage they get is going to be from that money. That's not correct, is it?
Yes, you are correct. That is not how we are doing it. So what we are looking at are actual dollars or Bitcoin, actual funds into the account and actual funds out of the account. The account balances that you're talking about, the $12,000 in your example, are based, that balance is also includes the 5 to 10% per week, or 5 to 9.99, I should say, percent per week of ROI and the multi-level marketing bonuses. None of those are based on any investing activity. And I sort of went over this a bit in one of the town halls, but I think it's actually an analogy that might be helpful to do again. So whenever all the contributions came in, it's all like they got put into a big lake. Think of it like they're all mingled together. So everyone's contributing, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of millions of dollars. Whenever someone got a withdrawal, they got money from that lake and then got it back, got that portion, but it's all the same funds. And so what happens is, if there's investing activity, in other words, there's investing activity that's making lots and lots and lots of money, that lake is going to grow, and there's going to be more water for folks to take out. But it wasn't; it was shrinking. And so the money that people put in, not only were those balances not reflective of reality, but they're other people's money if you're taking it out based on that. If you're taking it out based on the 12, that $7,000 in extra, that's not money that came from investment. That's money that came from other members of the community. That's other people's contributions. And so what I don't want to do is I want to try to get people back a percentage of their contributions, but it's not fair to anyone for me to give anyone somebody else's contributions as well. And that's why we have to go based on the 5 and not the 12. And I should say, I mean, the total balance on if you look at the aggregate balance that everyone had together, they were actually on the dashboard at the time of the receivership, was over $500 million. And the total value of E-mini FX at that point, if you look across the board, was around 170 million. Mm-hmm. So that's a $300+ million gap that that even if everyone wanted to withdraw all their money at once on December or on May 13, that there just wouldn't be the value there. Not even talking not talking liquidity now. I don't mean there's enough cash in the vault. I mean there's just not enough value. Even if everything could be sold like that and you get all the money right there, they would still only get a third of the money just based on value, not and then let alone cash.
So there wouldn't be enough money. So I want people to understand
Or property, enough money or
property.
investments. Yeah, it's not like in the bank where it's not like It's a Wonderful Life or one of those banks where the bank can't give everyone's deposit back because they've got loans on houses and they've got assets that are not liquid. The bank doesn't have enough cash to give money out. That's not the situation we're talking about. I want to be clear on that. We're talking about the total value of all the assets, the investments as well in MEFX just weren't close to what the values in people's accounts were if folks tried to withdraw all at once, and there was no realistic path to get there either.
There is another question that I think it's important people have been talking about, and I'm not going to name, but I know of 2 instances where somebody invested money with MiniFX, and that was big money, like 300,000, and they had gotten almost 2 times the money they invested because they were withdrawing money every Friday. So obviously these people have taken almost twice what they put in. I mean, nothing is owed to them. But is this kind of a win for that person, or do you go after this person and say, hey, you're taking more than you put in, you got to give something back, or no?
We're still assessing the scope of that. We're going to look, and we need this process to complete because, for example, I've had some users who there were deposits that were made, especially on the 11th or the 12th, that people have very good records for. They have the exact coin payments ID for that deposit that aren't in the portal. And the reason they're not in the portal is because they made the transaction, they're in coin payments, but they're not in the database yet in the MiniFX records, because before they had a chance to get into the MiniFX records, Mr. Alexander was arrested and the company was shut down. And so we still need to figure out and get a strong reconciled ledger of all the users and what they put in and what they got out. At that point, I will look into what the scope and the amounts of the net winners is usually the term that's used in this. It's a bit of a term of art in this circumstance. Pardon me. And we'll decide what to do at that point. Until I make a decision as to what the issues are, what the scope of that issue is and how to handle it. I really don't want to. I think it'd be irresponsible for me to just predict. I don't want to guess.
No, absolutely. And I think that we shouldn't lose the fact that a lot of people think this is just easy. They're saying, well, you have the list of the people who put money. Why don't we just give the money back to them? And I think it's good that we've gone over all the particulars, all the detail of the issues that actually goes into this, because MiniFX wasn't just this very well-run machine where you could just figure things out quickly. You had to do a lot of work in order to figure out what it is. Now, in terms of time frame, I know you talk about you could do it in first wave, second wave of distribution, but in terms of, if you had to guess in terms of time that you would actually write checks to people, what are we thinking about? A year, 2 years, 18 months? Just guess. I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm just saying kind of a ballpark figure.
I think those ranges are probably fairly. If there's an estimation, I think those are the ranges I would say.
Right, 18 months to 24 months, because I've been telling
maybe 12. I don't know. It's between 12 and 24. I think is a reasonable range. It may be it may be shorter, it may be longer. It'll depend on, there may be unexpected circumstances that arise as a result. That could happen in a receivership. We're still just at early stages, so giving an exact time frame, I don't want to set expectations unrealistically, and so it may take us some time.
Right.
And there's aspects of this process that are also beyond our control. We're doing what we can, but folks, there could be objections over a distribution plan and litigation over it from people. There could be none. That's one example I can think of something that's quite frankly outside our control. And so we're working, my team and I are working on this every day, every week, to try to move this process along. And we'll try to do it as, I think I've said in every status report, as soon as is practical, I want to make a distribution. It's so hard at this point to say when that will be, given all the different steps that have to happen before that distribution can be made.
But so that we can be clear, you've said a number of things, and I want to outline so people understand.
Sure.
You have to validate the claims. All the claims have to be validated. That's the first thing, right? And you have now until February, at least people have until February 26th to put in more claims. And then after that, the claim will be validated. That will be the first step.
Correct.
Okay. And then the second step then is for you to come up with a plan of distribution while at the same time working the tax issues. So that's right. So that
we'll do that in parallel. But
right,
yes,
you do that together. So that would take some
we're
time.
Doing the tax issues now. I mean, we're starting on those now. Oh yeah, we're working hard on behind the scenes on the tax issues already now. Okay. For sure.
But do you think the tax issues might be resolved before the summer, or maybe not? Or
I can't predict.
Right. I know it's hard. The IRS and the government, it's not easy to predict anything.
It could be anything from 3 months to 3 years with the IRS. It just takes. I can't predict.
No, listen, believe me.
I don't want to be coy about it either. That's one where I really cannot. It's just that's the world we're dealing with. And
no, it's hard. It's hard to predict. You just don't know. I mean, you can't push the government. You can only make requests. So, exactly. But the distribution plan is something that you and your office would prepare and submit it to the court right after you're done with the portal validation. And the court,
right? Well, we honestly, I've already started thinking about it. Okay. So we'll be working on that also in parallel to a lot of this as well. Okay. So now there's sometimes work happening behind the scenes that folks don't necessarily see to get to where we need to be.
Okay. Now, is there any circumstances where you can start making distribution while waiting for some tax things to work itself out, or you just have to wait?
That is possible, but we will have to have a much better sense for the numbers and the scope.
Okay.
But I have seen that done in the past, and that is possible.
Okay. So now that's possible. So I really wanted people to have an understanding of exactly what the process is, so that they understand that this is going to take time. And part of the time is not because of your lack of working diligently, it's just dealing with agencies and government and so on and so forth. And it takes time to figure out who owes what to whom and what to do. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about that. And I'm going to obviously talk in Creole so that people understand that how important it is. You know, bagay que M. Castleman, Rémi Évêque, c'est expliqué là. Il dit que jusqu'à le 26 février, nous gagnons pour nous mettre et claim que bagay, pour nous aller pour nous dire, OK, mais combien quoi nous te mettre. Et puis là, ça finit qu'on y a monsieur lui-même, il pourra préparer un plan pour aller devant le juge pour demander jugeant pour l'exécuter plan. Mais le problème qui gagne, c'est que faut que taxe qui paye, faut gagner pour payer parce que le gouvernement a besoin comme partout. Alors, ça va dépendre de receveur, non? Ça dépend de ARS qui gagne pour le dire combien de qui doit. Ça doit prendre du temps. Alors, monsieur dit, il a fait diligence pour lui, ouais, s'il était qu'à commencer en distribution dans 1 an. Mais il ne veut pas faire promesse parce qu'il ne veut pas faire promesse et puis pour s'acriver parce que grand pile qui est arrivé, il doit avoir une discussion entre lui-même et ARS parce que ARS doit besoin en pile l'argent et puis monsieur pas veut payer ARS tout l'argent ça parce que tout l'argent qu'il paye ARS, c'est moins scope qu'il a gagné pour nous. Monsieur expliquait tout très bien que il pas connaît comme chaque monde a besoin mais il va le faire en façon pour bagaille yo fait en façon côté li faire tout le monde joindre un petit bagaille mais il pas connaît exactement qui date. Alors si nous avons des questions nous avons toujours relais dans l'office ricevé pour nous poser question, nous allons relire tout moi-même, mais c'est exactement que ça le dit. I'm sorry, Mr. Castleman, I had to kind of give it a little bit in Creole of what you said in terms of the time frame or what's going to happen when, and talk a little bit about the timing for the distribution, because people are very nervous about that. And I had to explain to them that you are trying as hard as you can to see if this could happen in 1 year, but it's not up to you, because there are other things that could happen, dealing with the IRS, dealing with the court, dealing with other issues. But as far as you're concerned, you are working diligently to make sure that you can get to that point where you can actually write checks. But people shouldn't be under no illusion that this is going to happen next month or next year, because I know people were saying that, you know, someone sent me an answer, a question, saying that after Eddie Alexander pled guilty, there was this, I don't know if it was your office or somebody who said that they were going to get their money in 2 weeks. This is a question that somebody just sent me on my text. And
that's not something our office said.
The question said,
I don't know who said that, but that's not us. That was not true then. It's not true now. I don't know where that came from.
I don't know. This is what the person asked. Professor, we were told that the negotiation between the defense and the prosecutors, that the members were supposed to receive their money the second quarter of this year. I mean, I guess they're talking about last year. And I've heard that. And I heard that in the past. I've heard, oh, you're going to get your money in a couple of months. But that wasn't, you never said that. That wasn't from your office.
No, I don't know who said that, and it's unfortunate.
No, obviously,
I don't tell you. I don't know where it came from, so I don't know what to say. But other than information about when timing and distributions are going to occur should come from our website. Our website is available in English. It's available in French. It's available in Haitian Creole. It's www.eminifxreceivership.com.
Yeah, right below your name, they'll be able to see it.
Great. It has not just a user portal, but also frequently asked questions and all of our status reports. That is the source of information. We're going to post this on the website with the town halls that I've done as well. It's important to me that all users have access to information. And that's why we keep a website maintained, and why we keep our information on there, and why I file regular reports with the court. So, you know, to the extent there's information coming from other sources that is not my office, that information may or may not be correct. But the information that was on our website is, I think, the best source for community members to go. And if there are rumors, especially on timing a distribution, that are coming from other sources, I strongly recommend people go to our website for more information.
The only information,
I understand that why people are anxious and why they're looking for distribution sooner. So I understand where this is coming from, and I'm sympathetic to it, but I just want to make sure that people have the sources of information that are accurate, and that's why we have the website.
Well, very good. Another question, Mr. Castleman, is there any possibility maybe in the future you might want to do a live town hall with people where if they have questions they can ask? And, you know, I mean, usually it's done online. People type their questions and then you answer them. Is that something that you think might be useful? I don't know, just an idea.
We've done two virtual town halls. We did receive questions mostly in advance and then responded. I think that's something that we would consider doing again. And it could be, I've done them just solely, but potentially with a member of the community, and potentially with a translator as well, to go, you know, to a translator who was doing it in real time is another possibility that I would consider as well. So I'm open to doing something like that, and want to make sure that I'm communicating with users. I know a lot of communication related to ImmuniFX when it was in operation happened via YouTube, both via the official YouTube channels, but via other members themselves making YouTube videos and posting them online. And so that's why we've created our own YouTube channel to have our own town hall information. We posted an announcement related to the extension of the deadline. We have help videos on there. So I'm trying my team and I are working very hard to communicate with users, both in the court, in our court reports, and on the website, but also via video as well for users who consume information and who are more comfortable with consuming information via video.
Right, because I think it might be helpful also to try to get an interview with Teleimage and Metropole and some of those huge radio station and TVs that people often look for information about mini-FX, because we're trying to get as much information to the community as possible so they understand that what work you have to do, what the time frame looks like, and what all the other intricacies that deal with you being a receiver and all your duties and responsibility. Because I think that did come very clear that you are there to collect the asset for the people who put money in mini-FX and return those assets to the people who actually invested. Is that really what your duties are? Because people ask me, well, what is he doing? I mean, what's the work is he doing? And I try to explain he's appointed to do that. So is that not a fair interpretation of your duties?
Yeah, I think my duties are sort of officially my duties, I should say, are as set forth in the court order, and that's the complete set of them. But I think what you've summarized for most people is a good summary for the vast majority of people as to the scope of my duties.
Perfect. Well, Mr. Castleman, I want to thank you so much for joining the professor. You do have the last word. Is there anything you want to tell the community in terms of kind of wrapping up what to expect, and in terms of, because I know some people might think, oh, the system isn't fair, I don't know how much of money I'm getting, and I try to explain to people the receiver is going to be trying to be as fair as possible, but it's not an easy thing to do. So is there a last word you want to tell them?
No, just that I understand that for many people, this has been a very difficult time, that we understand that this has caused a number of people a significant amount of pain, and we're sympathetic to that. And I would just ask folks to go to our website, to respond to our emails, to when we ask you to go to the portal, please do that. We're to work with the processes that we set up in place, and we're going to do as much as we can for you in this difficult time and very difficult situation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Castleman, for joining us. Thank you very much. And certainly this channel is available to any information you have, and if you think this channel could be helpful in letting people know, we're willing to work with you on behalf of the community to make sure that people get that information. Again, I thank you so much, and God knows I wouldn't want to be in your position. This is a hard work, but you've done very well, and I thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us. Thank you.